Welcome to NTD News. I'm Jasmina Davis. Here are today's top stories. Reactions to a negative story about Hunter Biden causing controversy. Twitter and Facebook censored posts about an article written by the New York Post. Now both the social media platforms are coming under fire for showing potential pre-election bias. President Trump said he was thrilled to revisit Iowa. He praised his Supreme Court pick Amy Coney Barrett for her intellect and composure. Judge Amy Coney Barrett's Senate hearing questioning is up. We have reactions from members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Participants in a pro-Trump caravan are attacked in LA. 2 suspects have been charged with battery. One caravan driver says the incident reminded him of what he went through in communist Cuba. 2 American hostages were released from captivity in Yemen. Oman and Saudi Arabia reportedly helped with the release. Yemen is still in the midst of a civil war. President Trump praises Amy Coney Barrett's composure and measured response during the Senate confirmation hearings. He says he made the right choice in nominating her. He was speaking at a campaign rally in Des Moines, Iowa.
President Trump at an evening rally in the American heartland of Iowa. The president said he was thrilled to be back in the red state.
You're a big state to me, big in your heart, but you have a tremendous influence and a tremendous power, and you've never let me down.
He began reminiscing about the beginning of his political career, winning Iowa, then Ohio, and by much bigger margins than expected. The president came with a MAGA hat, which he later put on, and removed his tie, joking now we can relax and have a good time. He then revealed an extra treat for Iowa voters. He called up on stage Iowa wrestling legend Dan Gable. Ahead of his visit, President Trump said he would be awarding the Presidential Medal of Freedom to the former University of Iowa coach.
But Dan has been inducted into the USA Wrestling Hall of Fame, the US Olympic Hall of Fame, the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, and the United World Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Gable won 15 NCAA team championships from 1976 to 1997, turning next to the Senate confirmation hearings of the last 3 days. The president applauded his Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett for her intelligence and the way she has handled questioning. He said, "We made the right choice with Amy."
2 people involved with the Biden campaign tested positive for the CCP virus. One, Kamala Harris's communications director, and the other is a non-staff flight crew member. The campaign announced the results early this morning. Now the Biden team is canceling all in-person travel until Monday. Though in a statement, Biden's campaign manager said Harris will keep a robust and aggressive schedule of virtual campaign activities. Harris wrote on Twitter that she hadn't been in close contact with the 2 and that she had 2 negative tests this week. The campaign also says Biden had no exposure to the virus. He's set to attend an ABC town hall event tonight. New information about Joe Biden's potential involvement in Hunter Biden's business deals was just made public by the New York Post. Joe Biden has said that he has never spoken with his son about Hunter's foreign business deals. But an email between a Ukrainian executive and Hunter Biden hints otherwise. NTD's Melina Weiskup has the details.
Joe Biden has claimed that he's never spoken to Hunter about his son's foreign business deals.
Mr. Vice President, how many times have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings.
And so how do you know?
Let's talk about, here's what I know. I know Trump deserves to be investigated.
However, an email obtained by the Post reveals that in 2015, Joe Biden met with Burisma executive Vadym Pozharskyi after Hunter Biden invited the Ukrainian businessman to D.C. Burisma is a Ukrainian natural gas company which gave Hunter Biden a position as its board member in 2014. According to the emails, Burisma executive Pozharskyi wrote to Hunter Biden, quote, "We urgently need your advice on how you could use your influence to convey a message." Then in a second email nearly 1 year later in 2015, Pozharskyi again emailed Hunter, writing, quote, "Dear Hunter, thank you for inviting me to D.C. and giving me an opportunity to meet your father and spend some time together." So what exactly did Joe Biden and Pozharskyi speak about when they met? We reached out to the Biden campaign for clarification on the matter, but got no response. The emails between Hunter Biden and Pizarski were found on a laptop, which was dropped off at a repair shop in the Biden's home state of Delaware. The laptop most likely belongs to Hunter Biden, since the bill for the repair shop was billed to Hunter Biden. The shop owner reportedly notified federal agents of the contents on the laptop. Court documents show the FBI then took the laptop and a hard drive into custody in 2019. Before he turned it over to the FBI, the shop owner made a copy of their contents and gave it to Mayor Rudy Giuliani's lawyer. Giuliani then gave it to the New York Post and shared the Post story on his Twitter with the caption, "Much more to come." And now Facebook says they are suppressing the news story about the documents on Hunter Biden's business dealings. Today, a Facebook spokesman said in a statement that the story is eligible to be fact-checked by Facebook's third-party fact-checking partners, and that in the meantime, they will reduce its distribution on the Facebook platform. Reporting by Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
And further to the suppression of the New York Post story by Facebook, Twitter also blocked users from sharing the article. Both platforms' actions to censor the piece have caught the attention of a U.S. senator. The story alleged that Joe Biden's son Hunter sought lucrative deals with one of China's biggest energy companies that would benefit his family.
Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey says his company's actions were unacceptable. The platform blocked a New York Post article relating to a negative news story about Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son. He noted that Twitter blocked URL sharing via tweet and direct messaging about the article with zero context as to why they were blocked. The statement released later said the New York Post article violated the company's rules on private information and hacked materials. Dorsey's Twitter post received a prompt reply by Republican Senator Josh Hawley, who called it a joke and downright insulting. The senator called on the Federal Election Commission to investigate Facebook and Twitter. He suspects potential in-kind contributions to the Biden campaign. Both platforms engaged in suppression of a news story that would be damaging to the Democratic presidential nominee and in the run-up to an election. In a letter to the FEC, Hawley wrote, "Federal law prohibits any corporation from making a contribution to a federal candidate for office." Hawley sent another letter to Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg. It read, "The seemingly selective nature of this public intervention suggests partiality on the part of Facebook." Evidence of left-leaning bias is piling up against Facebook and Twitter. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany was locked out of her personal Twitter account on Wednesday. It was after she shared the New York Post article about Biden's son. Republicans in the House Judiciary Committee posted the text of the article on its website, giving people the ability to share it on Twitter from there.
President Trump and presidential candidate Joe Biden will take part in separate town hall events tonight, in place of the now canceled second presidential debate. The separate town halls will happen simultaneously, competing for voter viewership. Trump will participate in a town hall hosted by NBC News in Miami, Florida, where the canceled debate was set to be held. The event will take place outdoors at Perez Art Museum. Audience members will be socially distanced and are required to wear masks. And at the same time, Biden will be answering questions in a Philadelphia, Pennsylvania event hosted by ABC News. Both town halls will begin at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Richard Haass, president of the Council on Foreign Relations, expressed his disappointment, saying it's a missed opportunity for undecided voters. He said in a tweet, "Ideally, those inclined to support one candidate would watch the other learn something. Now most Americans will likely view their preferred candidate. We already have this. It's called cable TV." Still, with the election just 3 weeks away, the competing events give both candidates one of their last chances to appeal to voters en masse. The final presidential debate is still set to go ahead on October 22nd in Nashville, Tennessee. And the Senate Judiciary Committee conducted its third day of hearings for Supreme Court nominee Judge Amy Coney Barrett. This is the final day of questioning and the penultimate day of the hearings.
After a nearly 12-hour session on Tuesday, Judge Amy Coney Barrett is going through a second day of questioning from the Senate Judiciary Committee. Today, she continued fielding questions from 22 senators for hours, who each were given 20 minutes. The day saw a few technical difficulties where the microphones did not work. Senators again attempted to gauge Barrett's stance on a variety of issues, particularly on healthcare, abortion, voting rights, and a potential election dispute. Barrett said if she had a case that was about an election dispute, her role wouldn't be to elect a president, but to protect fair elections and the right to vote. Obamacare, which is one of the hot topics of the hearing, came up multiple times during today's questions. Barrett was asked about the upcoming Supreme Court case, California v. Texas. This case challenges the Affordable Care Act and the issue of severability, which is one of the main questions being considered. She continued to invoke the standard that judges should not offer their opinion or views on pending cases or grade precedents, but afforded the senators a detailed explanation on the doctrine of severability.
Insofar as it tries to effectuate what Congress would have wanted, it's the court and Congress working hand in hand.
Thank you. That's quite a definition. I'm really impressed. Thank you.
Senator Klobuchar asked Judge Barrett if she knew of Trump's tweets addressing his desires to overturn the Affordable Care Act. Barrett claims she does not recall whether or not she knew of the tweet before she was nominated, but the idea that some Republicans seek to overturn Obamacare is a part of public discourse.
All these questions, you're suggesting that I have animus or that I cut a deal with the president, and I was very clear yesterday that that isn't what happened.
In an exchange with Senator Leahy in which he asked if the president could pardon himself, Judge Barrett replied that nobody is above the law. She did not answer specific questions on how she would decide that case, as doing so would violate judicial ethics.
I agree, no one is above the law. It's one that calls for legal analysis of what the scope of the pardon power is. So because it would be opining on an open question when I haven't gone through the judicial process to decide it, it's not one on which I can offer a view.
Barrett reiterated that judges should remain independent and impartial, free of outside pressure on how to rule. She maintained that judges should not be pushing policy through their judicial decisions. Doing so, she said, and departing from the text of laws would be to subvert the will of the people. October 15th is the final day of hearings and will see outside witnesses vouch for and against Barrett's nomination. After the hearings, the Senate will vote on whether they will confirm Barrett as the 9th justice on the Supreme Court. Christina Kim, NTD News.
Leading members of the Senate Judiciary Committee gave their reactions to the hearings late last night. Here's what they had to say.
The chairman of the Judiciary Committee, a Republican, says in normal times he thinks Judge Barrett would have gotten a big vote.
I want to compliment my Democratic colleagues. The pressure on them to take her down, no matter how you do it, was enormous. And I think they fought hard in terms of trying to find out what she was about and in a proper fashion.
Graham said things have changed on the committee after what he called the destruction of Judge Kavanaugh, and that both sides of the aisle have made an effort to reset. But Senator Dick Durbin, a Democrat, said they shouldn't be holding the hearing during an election, and there's a reason Republicans scheduled it for this week.
The Republicans are determined to make certain that the new Supreme Court justice is on the court in time for an oral argument 7 days after the election on November 10th. And they believe that she will vote with them to eliminate the Affordable Care Act.
Today is the last day for senators to state their case. Judge Barrett won't be there, but a handful of witnesses who have experience working with her will share their personal stories. Democrats will likely ask for voting to be delayed until next week. Senator Graham has said he will honor their request.
Coming up, a New York City Police Union president accuses City Hall of amateur hour meddling. He says it's driving out all their top talent, including the police chief. A police union is slamming New York City leaders for meddling in their affairs. It says elected officials are driving out their top police talent, and public safety is suffering because of it.
The president of New York City's largest police union blasted City Hall. He accused city officials of amateur hour meddling with police procedures. Earlier this week, the NYPD's chief of patrol resigned over tensions with Mayor Bill de Blasio. The police union's president said this is what happens when elected officials play political games with police department operations. Our top talent in all ranks is being driven out the door, and public safety is suffering. City Hall's amateur hour meddling has left the NYPD broken, almost beyond repair. On Tuesday, Chief of Patrol Fausto Pachardo announced his resignation. The New York Post reported he was frustrated by Mayor de Blasio's micromanagement, citing police sources. Shootings are up 127% in New York City so far this year, yet the city recently voted to cut police funding by about $1 billion. And police officers have been leaving in large numbers since protests erupted following the death of George Floyd. Retirements are up 49% since then. The union president said, "We wish Chief Pichardo a long, happy, and successful retirement. Wherever he goes next, they will be getting one of our finest."
A couple from St. Louis, Missouri has pleaded not guilty to felony charges. The two personal injury lawyers were charged over the summer for bringing out their guns while Black Lives Matter protesters approached their home. According to charges filed against them, Mark McCloskey pointed an AR-15 rifle at protesters, while Patricia McCloskey brandished a semi-automatic handgun. Democrat Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner charged the couple with felony unlawful use of a weapon. A grand jury later added an evidence tampering charge. A former attorney to the couple said last week that the accusations against them demonstrate the highest degree of inappropriate behavior from the circuit attorney. And on Wednesday, 2 court decisions regarding absentee ballots were made in 2 different states. Both of them aim to uphold the security of absentee voting.
A federal judge ruled that absentee ballots in the presidential battleground state of North Carolina must have a witness signature. That's a boost for Republican groups seeking to enforce stricter rules on mail-in voting. The judge issued an injunction which bars voters from being able to fix an absentee ballot. That means changing a ballot that has already been sent in but lacked a third-party signature, attesting that the voter and not somebody else signed the ballot. The same day, Iowa's highest court upheld a state directive that was used to invalidate tens of thousands of absentee ballot requests. The requests were mailed to voters and were pre-filled with their personal information. Iowa's Secretary of State instructed county elections commissioners in July that all absentee ballot request forms they mail to voters must be blank. Democrats tried to argue the directive was unconstitutional. The courts rejected the challenge.
Firefighters have successfully extinguished a fire inside a commercial building in LA within hours. But what they discovered after they entered the building was rather unexpected. In Los Angeles, a marijuana grow was discovered after firemen responded to a fire in a commercial building. They arrived at the fire at around 3 a.m. When they got inside the building, they first encountered heavy smoke. Later, they saw the grow operation. A hazmat team had to be sent to the site because bottles with various chemicals were discovered inside the building. No injuries have been reported. NASA has partnered with 14 American companies. Together, they'll develop a range of technologies that will help forge a path to sustainable operations on the moon. The space agency is aiming to complete the goal by the end of the decade.
NASA's Administrator Jim Bridenstine announced the partnership on Wednesday. He spoke during a virtual lunar surface consortium.
We're going to enable the private sector, but we're also going to enable international partners for the biggest, broadest, most diverse, inclusive coalition of research and exploration on the surface of the moon in the history of humankind.
The Artemis program includes sending the first woman and next man to the surface of the moon in 2024. International partnerships will be critical in achieving a sustainable and robust presence on the moon later this decade. The program is also preparing to conduct a historic human mission to Mars. NASA said it hopes more exploration of the moon will help the U.S. establish a strategic presence in space and grow their international partnerships.
It's a process by which we can all go explore space, including other celestial bodies, together in a way that is collective.
International cooperation on Artemis is intended to bolster space exploration and to enhance peaceful relationships among nations.
Coming up, people are talking about a speech made by Chinese leader Xi Jinping, but it's not the contents of his speech that have people talking. And a speech by Chinese leader Xi Jinping is causing a stir online. It's not the contents of the speech itself that are drawing attention, but rather what happened during the delivery. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more on the story.
Now we turn to Chinese Communist Party head Xi Jinping and a recent speech that's causing a stir online. But his words weren't what drew attention. Xi spoke during a 40th anniversary celebration on Wednesday, marking the establishment of the Shenzhen Special Economic Zone in southern China. His remarks lasted for about an hour, but during the last 8 minutes, he coughed 4 times. As soon as Xi started coughing, the Communist Party's media mouthpiece, CCTV, immediately cut away from the podium. Instead of keeping the cameras trained on Xi, TV coverage opted to show shots of the audience. But even though it wasn't seen, sounds of his coughing and drinking from a cup of water could still be heard clearly. The incident comes amid a sensitive social climate in China, where many remain concerned about the potential for resurging virus outbreaks. First, we turn to an update on the CCP virus outbreak in Qingdao City. The eastern Chinese city entered the 3rd day of mass testing of the CCP virus on Wednesday. According to official data, this city is home to 9 million permanent residents. But local media reports on Wednesday stated that 11 million people would be made to undergo mass testing. The reports didn't give details on who was included in that figure, but some suspect it may include those who live there but aren't registered as permanent residents. That could include visitors, college students, or workers from other areas. So far, the city's official results appear promising. As of Wednesday, 800,000 people had been tested, while 500,000 of them came back negative. Not a single test has come back positive yet. With no new confirmed cases found over the past 3 days since mass testing began, the city's total remains at 12 if the official figures are accurate. But some signs seem to indicate a very different situation. Chinese netizens on Tuesday posted a photo online, noting that medical teams from other regions were being sent to Qingdao to assist local medical staff. The next day, Chinese state-run media reported that the National Health Commission had allocated 9,000 milliliter plasma for patients in Qingdao. The report explained that the plasma is considered an emergency treatment. Collected from recovered virus patients, it's only given to those who are critically ill. Yet, according to official data, there are not critically ill patients inside the city. The Chinese regime says the situation in the city is well under control, but suspicions are rising, with some saying the city's outbreak actually started back in late September. Some netizens speculate that authorities were aware of it but didn't announce it publicly. A photo shared online shows what appears to be an internal warning for staff of one Chinese hospital. It was put out by the first affiliated hospital of Naval Military Medical University in Shanghai City, also known as Shanghai Hospital. It advises anyone that had planned to visit Qingdao during China's week-long National Day holiday should refrain for the time being. China's National Day is often marked by a huge surge in travel and tourism across the country. The internal notice was issued on September 29th, days before the start of the event. A French museum announced on Monday that it has decided to cancel its partnership with a Chinese museum. It was set to host an exhibition about Mongolian history and culture. The Nantes History Museum from Western France is seeking European and American collections to work with. Since September, the CCP has hardened its stance on the Mongolian population in the Chinese-ruled Inner Mongolia region. It's caught international attention. In this context, Chinese authorities require the French museum to avoid certain keywords in the exhibition. That includes terms like Mongolian Empire and Genghis Khan, the name of the founder of the Mongol Empire, who lived about 1,000 years ago. The exhibit title was even changed to Chinese Steppe Culture of the World in order to avoid the word Mongolian. The museum described the move as rewriting aimed at completely eliminating Mongolian history and culture.
Still to come, with no stimulus deal in sight, is there anything struggling Americans can do? We talked to a personal finance expert who says you can fund your own stimulus. And in Spain, pistachio trees are bringing a bounty beyond their edible harvest. Local farmers say Spain could even take on other big producers around the world. The Turnstyle Underground Market in New York City is back in business for the first time in 7 months. It's getting help from its landlord, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority. Most of the businesses there are mom-and-pop shops. They've been devastated but plan to make a comeback. Here's our latest financial and business news on jobs and the economy.
Macarons, pasta, donuts, wine, and even haircuts. That's what you'll find at the Turnstyle Underground Market at the Columbus Circle subway station. It's been closed for over half a year, but now it's reopening. There's about 40 eateries, stores, and kiosks. But the mom and pop shops tell NTD News it's been tough since the lockdowns.
I mean, it's been hard,
It's heartbreaking, you know what I mean?
You literally seen a drop of over like 90%.
It's been a difficult few months.
To help its tenants, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority is switching from a fixed rent model to a percentage rent model.
So that our interests are aligned. If they succeed, we just get a percentage of their revenue. And we would put that in effect for the duration of the pandemic.
The financial aid applies to small businesses only. Large brands with national chains won't qualify. Even with tourism and ridership down, owners are remaining optimistic.
How you doing?
We will stay strong, definitely.
Hopeful that we're able to pull that off together.
Be optimistic, and you have to be a fighter. You have to know that there's always going to be bumps in the roads, and we've been there before in New York, and Lord knows that we come back stronger.
Some owners are happy to be back.
Especially for the holiday season coming up, so we're definitely excited.
We are all from different countries, but we're all here for the same reason, and is to have a great life in a great city.
The Turnstyle Underground Market says they expect to be at 70% store occupancy by next month. Some shops are opening today, others are opening within the month. Most business owners are hopeful to start welcoming back New Yorkers and visitors alike. Phil Zoe, NTD News, New York.
Stimulus talks are at a standstill, but do not fear. We spoke to a personal finance expert who says, why not fund your own stimulus check?
The White House and congressional negotiators can't agree on the next stimulus package, but many Americans are hurting as they wait. The last stimulus check of $1,200 was sent out in the spring.
They're all suffering.
There's people out there with their families still don't have a job. People lost their job.
Yeah, I'm saving right now. I think it would be nice to get something.
President Trump offered a $1.8 trillion stimulus bill last week, but was rejected by the Democrats.
Anyone who has a heart or compassion, I mean, really, what's holding back?
We spoke to personal finance company Bankrate. It recommends that people save up and fund their own stimulus check.
What if they had $1,200 set up so they had their own stimulus check for the future?
Goldberg says by saving a little each day, a person can save $1,200 in a year.
A few dollars a day times 365, that'll get you to that $1,200.
He says the saving mindset is important. Adding to your emergency fund will always be good. Last week, President Trump said he would call off stimulus talks. But yesterday, he called on lawmakers to, quote, go big or go home. It's not clear when House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and the White House will speak again on the stimulus deal. Goldberg says the next step is to save 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. That's the usual recommended amount for an emergency fund. Phil Zoe, NTD News, New York.
Environmentalists in Portugal say an avocado boom in recent years is draining an already scarce water supply.
Not far from Richard Allen's farm in the sleepy village of Barrett, São João, almost 500 acres of avocado fields can suck up as much as 1 million gallons depending on the season. His well is nearly dry, and the landscape around his property is parched.
It's not available for those of us who were expecting to be able to tap that for our daily life.
Avocados use 4 times more water than Algarve's more traditional orange crops. Plantations of the fruit cover some 3,950 acres. One of the region's main dams, Bravura, is 18% full. That is the lowest level in Portugal. According to the Drought Monitoring Commission, Algarve's dams only have enough water to last until the end of the year.
A disaster will happen soon. It is obvious.
People like Viana argue producers should opt for crops native to the area, such as olives, carob, and cork oak. Head of the Algarve Agricultural Authority, Pedro Montero, said that there is a potential to expand avocado crops. However, the lack of water is off-putting to some investors. Avocado producers acknowledge water shortages. Some have implemented methods to use less and have urged the government to act.
Pistachios are fast becoming a popular crop in the Spanish plains of Castilla-La Mancha. The new crop is helping to tackle unemployment and depopulation in the area.
The area is peppered with windmills and castles. Historically, it's more associated with vineyards than nuts. Spanish farmers used to plant olive groves and vineyards, but market prices for those commodities have dropped. This new crop is helping tackle unemployment and depopulation.
When people saw me uproot a vineyard on a plot like this one, in which there was a considerably big vineyard with a large quantity of grapes, some called me crazy.
Now the demand for the pistachio is making it an attractive crop. It wasn't as easy 20 years ago when many farms became established. Jesus Santiago used to work in a mine, but now he runs Pistachio JR. His produce is selling in France for the first time. This area of Spain, with its hot temperatures, low humidity, and few frosts, is particularly suited for pistachio cultivation.
As of today, cultivation in Castilla-La Mancha can be carried out perfectly.
Experts say that from the agricultural area point of view, Spain has no competition in Europe. The country may possibly take on the world's biggest producers, Iran and the US.
Up next, the head of the UK's Domestic Security Service says Communist China is the UK's biggest long-term threat. Russia is providing bursts of bad weather, while China is changing the climate. And drones are posing big threats to many prisons. Some prisoners are using them for smuggling drugs or phones. A prison in Germany is testing a net gun to catch the drones. Find out more after the break. Over to Europe. During the pandemic, British spies are very busy adapting to new terrorist threats and protecting the vaccine research. But the head of the security services says in recent decade, Communist China will be the biggest long-term threat. NTD UK's Neil Woodrow will bring us more news from Europe.
Thanks. Welcome to our UK newsroom with UK and European news. The new head of MI5, the UK's domestic security service, says that Britain faces state-backed hostility from Russia and China among a cauldron of threats.
MI5 boss Ken McCallum says the UK faces a, quote, nasty mix of national security threats with state-backed hostile activity by Russia and China on the rise.
If the question is, which country's intelligence services caused the most aggravation to the UK in October 2020, the answer is Russia.
He then named the country that would bring the biggest long-term challenges.
The answer is China. You might think in terms of the Russian intelligence services providing bursts of bad weather, while China is changing the climate.
According to McCallum, British spies are trying to defend the country from increasingly diverse and complex threats.
We see threats to our democracy, threats to our infrastructure, threats to our economy, threats to our academic research. It really does cover a very broad range.
MI5 is tasked with protecting Britain's national security. Its main job currently is countering international terrorism, though it is also a counterintelligence agency.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson resists a short national lockdown for England, but is ruling nothing out.
With cases of the CCP virus rapidly rising, the British government opted this week for a three-tier system of local measures. But the opposition leader is calling for a temporary national lockdown, saying it could be more effective than local measures.
And I rule out nothing, of course, in combating the virus. But we are going to do it with the local, the regional approach that can drive down and will drive down the virus if it is properly implemented.
On Wednesday, the UK reported nearly 20,000 new cases of the CCP virus, with 138 deaths. Liverpool in northwest England is the first and the only city so far to be put on the highest alert, with residents facing more restrictions.
The number of Spanish children treated for poisoning after ingesting hand sanitizing gels has rocketed since its widespread use during the pandemic. The Spanish National Toxicological and Forensic Institute reported the total intoxications from the gels so far this year is almost 10 times the number reported in all of 2019. That's 874. Children, especially toddlers, accounted for almost 2/3 of the cases. Most of them had swallowed the gel. A much smaller percentage got it in their eyes or became intoxicated after inhaling the product. And heavy fighting continues between Armenia and Azerbaijan over the disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh. The two former Soviet Union republics accuse each other of violating a ceasefire in Nagorno-Karabakh, drawing warnings of an impending humanitarian crisis. Both sides deny breaking the truce, which was brokered by Russia and went into effect on Saturday.
We estimate that already hundreds of thousands of people across the region are directly or indirectly affected.
The International Committee of Red Cross urges the two sides to finalise the details so a swap of prisoners and bodies of those killed can go ahead. The leaders of the Golden Dawn Party of Greece have been sentenced to prison for running a criminal gang. The court handed down 13-year jail terms to 6 former lawmakers. Other former lawmakers were sentenced to 5 to 7 years in prison. Golden Dawn was catapulted from obscurity to infamy in the space of a few years. It once had 18 seats in the parliament, but after the killing of a rap singer by one of its supporters, it began unravelling and now has no seats. British Army veteran and fundraiser Captain Tom Moore is presented with the very first rail discount card for military veterans. British Transport Secretary Grant Shapps visited Captain Tom at home and presented the card to him. The 100-year-old veteran shot to international fame in the early days of Britain's lockdown, when he raised $43 million for the country's health service. The new card will allow over 800,000 veterans to claim discounts on train journeys throughout the country. In Munich, Germany, a prison demonstrated a new drone-catching device.
The Justice Minister for the German state of Bavaria says drones pose a rising security threat to prisons, and it's prompted them to trial the Dropster net gun.
This device uses compressed gas to shoot a net at the drone, so it's not something that endangers neighbours or staff members. It securely catches a drone and brings it down.
He said since 2015 there have been 57 sightings of drones near a prison, including some flyovers.
We have found 2 drones carrying mobile phones and drugs on prison grounds.
The gun is manufactured by Swiss company Droptech. According to the company's website, the gun has a range of 30 meters and is recommended for personal and property protection.
That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Back to New York.
Coming up, scientists in Israel bring an extinct fruit back to life. The Judean date was thought to have become extinct 2,000 years ago. A group of Israeli scientists in the Arava Desert are growing date palms from trees thought to be extinct.
The biblical time historical accounts mention Judean dates as being very large. It's believed they have been extinct for close to 2,000 years.
They're actually quite delicious, and they're big. They're about 18 grams, I would say.
Dr. Sarah Salon is a researcher of natural medicine at Hadassah Hospital. She wanted to germinate the seeds of this ancient fruit. Dr. Salon obtained the seeds from the Masada archaeological site in the Judean desert. She teamed up with agronomist Dr. Elaine Soloway to germinate the seeds collected. It set off a 15-year effort to reproduce the fruit famed for its nutrients. The ancient seeds were soaked in water. Then, hormones were added to encourage germination and rooting. Finally, they were planted in soil in a quarantined area.
So what happens was I hydrated the seeds very slowly in a bottle warmer. I treated them with gibberellic acid and with an enzymatic fertilizer.
In the first batch, there were 3 seeds which produced 1 male tree. The first plant that sprouted was named Methuselah after the biblical figure known for his long life. The tree named Methuselah was planted in January 2005. It sprouted on March 18, 2005. Being a male, it was not able to produce fruit. It was instead used to pollinate a female plant named Hannah. The female was planted in the spring of 2014. It sprouted later that year. In total, 7 trees have been successfully planted. 5 are male, and 3 are female.
Reindeer are a hallmark of Christmas celebrations, and for many, Christmas wouldn't be the same without them. But with most events and gatherings canceled this year, a business that rents the dashers and dancers is falling on hard times instead.
George Richardson has one of England's largest reindeer herds. He keeps them in fields behind his garden centre in the appropriately named Cold Hesladon. He owns 110 reindeer and would usually rent them out for various events.
Reindeers go all over the place, so we go to schools, we go to Christmas light switch-ons, parades, shopping centres.
Some go out for long-term hire or to venues with many Santas. But this year, business has been painfully slow due to the pandemic.
Bookings are way down, probably about 95% down this year. The usual sort of events that involve crowds of people are not happening.
The year's income depends on the 6 weeks before Christmas. But no revenue isn't their only financial burden.
It's horrendous, really, and unfortunately we fall outside of the scope of any financial help as well.
Luckily, they have enough money on the side to survive the winter, and they're already eyeing next year's pre-Christmas period and hoping for the best.
And that's all for now. Catch us again at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Jasmina Davis.